It was the first day of the 20th CPC Congress on Sunday, and a lot of the things that were said were along expected lines, but some things were left unsaid, and they too were significant. Over the next few minutes, let's get to the key takeaways from the biggest political event in China. First, let's start off with Taiwan and Hong Kong, which have historically resisted mainland China's grip. Xi Jinping spoke on their status and Beijing's future plans. You have to listen to this.
In
the face of the turbulent changes in the situation in Hong Kong, we have effectively exercised full control over the special administrative region in accordance with the Constitution and the Basic Law, and implemented the principle of patriots ruling Hong Kong, resulting in a major turnaround in the situation in Hong Kong from chaos to governance.
What exactly does this mean? Basically, a no-nonsense approach in the neighborhood. That's the messaging. The maintenance of China's perceived territorial integrity, no matter who gets in the way. What was left unsaid was China's position on India. During the CPC Congress, China played clips from the June 2020 clash between the two sides. Chinese troops have still not left Indian territory. These actions showing that China does not intend to return to the status quo. Xi Jinping also spoke about improving the Chinese army. He said Beijing opposes a Cold War mentality in international diplomacy.
China stands firmly against all forms of hegemony and power politics. The Cold War mentality, interference in other countries' internal affairs, and double standards. China will never seek hegemony or engage in expansionism.
He did not directly mention the United States, but the comments coming as ties between Beijing and Washington continue to plummet. Xi Jinping did not talk about Russia's invasion of Ukraine either, or about the apparent friendship between China and Russia. Coming to COVID-19, Xi Jinping defended China's zero-COVID lockdown policy, saying that the policies achieved significant results. Listen in. We'll get to that reaction in just a bit. Now, his lauding of the zero-COVID lockdown measures, overlooking the economic hardships that have been caused by these lockdowns. No mention was made of the protest banners that were seen in Beijing. Xi Jinping did not speak about the economic troubles on the ground. The real estate sector crisis was not addressed. The stress on China's banks did not get a mention. It seems Xi Jinping's strategy was highlighting the emotional issues, looking at the bright side of China's policies, and sweeping aside any unpleasant news. But then he is a politician who seeks to extend his rule and his grip. So is this even surprising? And for more on this, we have with us Elizabeth Larousse. She is a political analyst and an author. Good to have you with us, Elizabeth. Let's just talk about the Chinese president's statement on zero COVID, which comes in sharp contrast to the actual situation on the ground, the protests, the shortage of food, the mounting anger as a result of these restrictions.
Xi Jinping knows that China is not prepared to open its doors, to drop its zero COVID policy. China's healthcare system is not ready for an influx of patients. China has approximately one GP, one general practitioner, per like 6,700 people. And the World Health Organization standard is one doctor per 1,500, 2,000 people. So Xi Jinping knows that if China drops the zero COVID policy, that he can't take the risk of the likelihood of a lot of people falling ill and overtaxing the healthcare system, as we saw in the earlier days of COVID. Do you remember those scenes in January of 2020 when the hospitals were filled and doctors were literally collapsing on the floor and having mental breakdowns? A lot of the elderly in China are still not inoculated, and China's not allowing in foreign vaccines. So China doesn't want to be embarrassed if it turns out, oops, its vaccination is not very useful. So I anticipate the zero COVID policy, regardless of the risks and the harm it's doing to the economy, to continue well into 2023.
Let's also talk about the economic situation on the ground as a result of these COVID-19 policies, and a lot of the censorship attempts that have been made to try and scrub out any criticism of these policies when it comes to the mounting anger on the ground against them.
Right. Well, you can see that China is, the Chinese government's very effective in scrubbing any type of censorship. If you put something negative out there on WeChat, you lose access to that platform. And not only can you not access social media, but a lot of people use WeChat for paying bills and making reservations and ordering food. So who wants to risk that? The Chinese Communist Party appears to be willing to suffer some, negative economic consequences as a result of COVID. You notice a lot of authoritarian governments, they are willing to sacrifice the economy for the party's goals, whether it be strengthening the party, militarizing the country. So it shouldn't be a big surprise that the Chinese Communist Party is willing to sacrifice. They had 30 years of double-digit growth. They can check off that box that it built up the economy, and with the help of a lot of foreign countries that invested in there and foreign companies that opened in there. And now Xi Jinping's goal is not to rely on the West or the outside world. He wants the world to rely on China. And so what he's doing is he's building up China so it can rely on its own, and don't expect the growth to be as robust as it has been. But again, his goals now have changed. His goals are not so much that robust 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% growth. It is now to use that growth to strengthen the country, particularly militarily, and to keep the Communist Party in power. And it will use social media to do that.
All right, Elizabeth, before I let you go, a quick comment also on the statement that we've seen coming in on Taiwan. And the rhetoric aside, how far do you think China is really willing to go when it comes to showing its anger against Nancy Pelosi's visit, against the kind of support that we've seen coming in from the U.S. on Taiwan?
Well, note that Xi Jinping did reiterate the official party line is that China seeks peaceful reunification. However, it will never renounce the threat of the use of force. So I anticipate going forward, China's already pushed the envelope after Nancy Pelosi's visit. So I expect more military jets to cross the median line in the Taiwan Strait, more military exercises on the east and the west side all around Taiwan. Those things that happened immediately after Nancy Pelosi left Taiwan will continue to indicate that China can do what it wants if it deems necessary.
All right, Elizabeth, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.